Fantasy football owners, the trade deadline is approaching in most leagues. So today I'm going to be giving you some guys that you should consider trading for, and a few guys that if you have, maybe you should try to get rid of them as quickly as you can. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any fantasy football questions or comments, put them in the comment section. I will answer them on the next video. Let's start off with guys you should be targeting in trades. I'm going to give you 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and 1 tight end. First running back is David Montgomery. Now, I know he is in concussion protocol right now, but his schedule should say it all. Green Bay, Detroit, Houston, Minnesota, Jacksonville. That's enough right there to go in and get the trade. I know he's not super high upside, but just the matchups in and of themselves are enough to start him as a flex starter, even when he's not necessarily 100%. I know he gets banged up a lot, but just the schedule in and of itself is enough to trade for him. So David Montgomery is another guy. Another guy with a very favorable schedule is Joe Mixon. Let's not forget that last year Joe Mixon was not that good for the majority of the year, but the last 4 or 5 games turned it on and won a lot of fantasy owners' leagues. And if you look at the rest of their schedule, weeks 11 through 14, they play Washington, New York Giants, Miami, and Dallas. When you get to play 3 NFC East opponents in 4 weeks, you need to, there's an automatic stock up, trending up on your name. So Joe Mixon is obviously a guy that hopefully, if you were in you're not in the situation where you're going to be fighting for a playoff spot, hopefully you have that already secured. But if you need to get a few wins in these upcoming weeks to be able to get into the playoffs, Joe Mixon's a guy that you really need to consider going after. I know that his matchups in the playoffs aren't the best. He does have one against Houston, I believe, in championship week, but he does play Pittsburgh in week 15. However, the Steelers' run defense hasn't been as good without Tyson Alualu. Let's see how long that takes him to recover and come back. So, other than that, Mixon doesn't really have another super tough game after week 11. So if you need to get some wins to get into the playoffs, Joe Mixon is a guy you really need to go after. Going to the wide receivers, Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. Again, another guy with some easy matchups, has just played the Giants. I believe they still have to play. No, they did not play the Giants, but I believe they have to go still against the Eagles once. That may be a little bit more difficult of a matchup, but if you look at his entire schedule the rest of the year on paper, it's very favorable. I would guess probably top 5 among wide receivers in terms of favorable schedules the rest of the way. And he has just been a constant producer no matter who's been the quarterback. He's the number 1 option in that offense, and it's going to stay that way. So Terry McLaurin's a guy, can be a good wide receiver 2 for you. If you need some depth, great guy to go after. Tyler Boyd is the other guy. We already talked about the schedule, and really that's all you're worried about right now as fantasy owners. Who are you playing weeks 15 and 16? And if you're in the position where you need to get some wins to get into the playoffs, who are you playing, weeks 12, 13, 14? Well, Giants, Dolphins, and Cowboys. That's a recipe for success. And Tyler Boyd, believe it or not, is the number 8 fantasy wide receiver. So don't be so surprised by, oh, wow, Tyler Boyd, he's just that middle-of-the-pack wide receiver. He has been a low-end wide receiver 1 this year, believe it or not, and he has gained more and more looks from Joe Burrow week by week. So I believe he's another guy that's trending up. Really buy into the Bengals offense these next 4 to 5 weeks. The last guy that you should consider going after is Noah Fant. And this one's not super popular because he has been injured, got banged up again yesterday, only getting 4 to 5 points a game. However, if you go back to Drew Lock at the beginning of the year, that's where he looks to, especially in the red zone. He's looking for that big target. He doesn't have it in Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy, I know he had a big stat line, but both he and KJ Hamler have been somewhat inconsistent. They haven't been quite as efficient as what you would hope in terms of the amount of targets they're getting. Tim Patrick's been that guy who's kind of been that other presence for them in the absence of Cortland Sutton. But Noah Fant is a guy that I believe is going to get looks in the red zone, and considering that the tight end position is so thin, if you can get a bargain on him and you need a tight end, I believe he's a guy that come playoff time, again, another team that has very favorable schedules, the Denver Broncos. So I believe that Fant is a guy that can get you, consistently 7 to 10 points. And if you look at their schedule, weeks 14, 15, and 16, all of them, he has a chance to get in that 10 to 15 point range. 2 guys that I think you should trade away, I'll give you 5 as well. Desean Watson, he has 2 games against Indianapolis coming up, a game against New England and a game against Chicago. Now I know he has been still phenomenal considering all the turmoil that's gone around with Houston this year. But if you have depth at the quarterback position, like if you have Justin Herbert as your backup, if you picked him up, and he can play as your starter, if you have two good quarterbacks, try to trade Desean Watson to a quarterback needy team and get some form, get some running back depth, get some wide receiver depth that you're going to need come playoff time, because Watson's schedule isn't very favorable. A couple running backs that don't have terribly favorable schedules are James Robinson and Todd Gurley. I happen to own both of them in one of my leagues. James Robinson's playoff matchups are Baltimore and Chicago. Both of those bottom 5 matchups. You got to worry some. Now, I know his schedule is a little bit more favorable the rest of the way until the playoffs, but it's something to keep an eye on. James Robinson is a top 5 running back right now. I would at least see what you could get for him. If there's a guy that's in your league that's been trying to get him away from you this year, maybe see what he can give you if you're needy at quarterback or maybe tight end, and he has, Travis Kelce or something, maybe that's a move you'd want to consider making if you have enough depth at the running back position. Just something to keep an eye on. And then Todd Gurley, Brian Hill does have a role in this offense now. Todd Gurley just isn't as fast as he used to be. In weeks 15 and 16, he goes against Tampa Bay, who has a great run defense. And then Todd Gurley goes up against Kansas City in week 16, a game that Atlanta will more than likely be trailing and not running the ball a whole lot. So those are two things to keep an eye on. Wide receiver, Jarvis Landry. This one is a hot name that people are trying to pick up now, but that's why I'm saying to trade him. You can entice owners because he has good matchups in weeks 15 and 16, the Giants and the Jets. And he has a huge target share now with Odell Beckham out. He just got, 11 targets? The only thing is he's not that efficient with them. Even when he gets catches, they're mostly underneath catches. He doesn't do a whole lot in the red zone. Cleveland is utilizing the running backs with Nick Chubb coming back and Kareem Hunt. They're going to use them. They're going to use David Njoku, Harrison Bryant, Austin Hooper. They're going to use the tight ends a lot. So I think Jarvis Landry is still not the best option unless you're in a PPR league. I think Jarvis Landry, if you own him, he's a guy you can probably get signed for if you trade him right now. And I probably get something decent for it, even if you make a wide receiver swap, could be potentially worth it. See if whoever has, a Tyler Boyd would be willing to make that move. I don't think they would, but it's just something to keep an eye on. Maybe Deontay Johnson is a guy. If you can do Jarvis Landry for Deontay Johnson, I would take that 10 times out of 10 right now. The other guy I would trade is Christian Kirk, only because his stock is so high right now. Again, it's going to depend on the league. If you can get signed for him in your league, I would move on from him because teams have gotten on to double and triple teaming DeAndre Hopkins. Once Christian Kirk starts taking some of that pressure off of Hopkins is going to go back to being wide receiver 1. Christian Kirk's going to come back down to earth. I know, again, their schedule also is not that bad if you look at it. But Kirk has had 3 solid games in a row. Trade him while his stock's high because his stock's not going to get any higher than this. Again, this all depends on the league that you're in. But see what you can get for some of these guys. I believe they can net you some decent returns. And those guys, Montgomery, Mixon, McLaurin, Boyd, and Fant, 5 guys that you should be targeting if you want to win your fantasy leagues. That's going to do it all for today. Be sure to like this video, share this video on social media, and subscribe to this channel. And if you have any fantasy questions or comments, put them in the comment section. And I will answer them on the next video. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.